Hi, I'm Larry. Welcome back to my kitchen, and this is Dad, What's for Dinner? Tonight we're making Swedish meatballs. Swedish meatballs are a little bit different than like traditional like spaghetti and meatballs, Italian style meatballs. The process is more or less the same, where you have breadcrumbs and meat and maybe some onions and other things mixed in. You make your meatballs, but the sauce is a little bit different. It's more almost like gravy. But it's still a pretty fun recipe, and it has a lot of pretty simple techniques. So let's go ahead and do that and get into it. Okay, so we're going to get started with these meatballs and doing something a little less than traditional. The recipe calls for some ground pork. I don't have any ground pork in the fridge, but I do have some pork chops. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and debone these. Best I can. And make some ground pork. Now, I could, I suppose, make the trip to the grocery store, and go get actual ground pork. But these pork chops have been in my freezer long enough, and rather than risk them being wasted, or I guess when you have dogs in the house, nothing's necessarily wasted, but because I could always turn it into dog food, but I'd really rather not. Especially when this is pretty straightforward. And it's going to give me pretty much what I need. So I think I've done this with beef before, where you've seen me grind my own beef. And we're going to go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is just chop this into chunks. And we're going to pop it in the freezer here to get it not completely frozen, but relatively cold. And this should give us a nice blend of pork and fat, of meat and fat. I'm just going to put all of this in my little mini tray here. And I'm going to put that in the freezer for about, probably about 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pull our pork chunks out of the freezer. I have a food processor set up here, and we're just going to put these chunks in here. And if I remember, I'll link to the video that I have the same process with the beef. If not, not the end of the world. So we're just going to put that in there, and we're going to give it some pulses. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that. And I think that we can call that good. You just want it to be nice and ground, and I think we're there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside and get ready with our other ingredients. Okay, so we're going to get started with our meatballs here. First thing we're going to start with is making what they call the panade, which is basically breadcrumbs with milk. So we're going to take a cup. I can get them out of the thing. That's a half a cup. Sorry. There we go. That's a cup of breadcrumbs. I just use store-bought, and I have Italian style. Yeah, Italian-style breadcrumbs in Swedish meatballs, but that's what I have in the pantry. And to that, I'm going to add a cup of milk. And we're just going to mix that up. And we're going to let this rest for a few minutes. And the idea is to fully hydrate those breadcrumbs so they can bring in the moisture to your meatballs. And looking at this, I'm realizing the recipe is for 1.5 cups, not 1 cup. So I need to add another 1/2 cup. Whoops. There we go. Anyway, we'll mix this together and let it set for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and move on to actually combining our meat and getting ready to make meatballs. Mixing everything together. We have here 1 pound of ground beef. We have approximately 1 pound of our pork that we ground earlier. We have our panade. We're going to go ahead and put that in. We have 1 egg. Break that in there. I have 1 small onion, and you want it fairly well diced, or I guess this is technically a mince. You don't want huge chunks of onion in your meatball. So very, very finely diced. I have a tablespoon of Worcestershire, 2 teaspoons of salt, teaspoon of black pepper, and a tablespoon of dried parsley. And then I'm going to go ahead and wet my hands a little bit. That makes the next part a little easier. And we're just going to start mixing. So there's differing schools of thought about when you're making meatballs and how much you should handle the meat. Like, there are some people that would look at what I'm doing here, squeezing that meat, and say, oh, you're going to make a tough meatball. Honestly, I don't think I am. And by the time it cooks, and by the time it has the sauce, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Anyway, you don't want to work it more than you have to. That's definitely a thing, but you don't need to worry about, inadvertently making it too tough or something like that. Okay. So once you have it pretty well incorporated, you keep going until it's to your liking and everything is very well mixed. And then we are going to go ahead and make our balls, our meatballs. And I'm thinking, looking at this is looking pretty well incorporated. What you want to kind of avoid is like big chunks of the panade, right? So you don't want it just like a big clump of gooey breadcrumbs and no meat attached to it. So you want to kind of avoid that. But I think we're there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up my hand a little bit and get ready to roll these into balls. Okay, so we are ready to start making some meatballs here. I got my handy dandy baking dish, and then I'm gonna just spray some, lightly spray with vegetable oil. Actually, that's avocado oil, but you want to spray it a little bit with oil just to make sure that these aren't going to stick. And you can do these with your hand. I have found that it's quicker and easier just to use a scoop. If you don't have a scoop, you can just make the balls whatever size you want. Okay, so that fills up that pan. So this will go into a 350 degree oven for about 25-ish minutes. You want to cook them until they're 165 degrees. Okay, so while those meatballs are cooking, we're going to go ahead and get started on our sauce. And it's pretty simple, straightforward. We're going to start with a 1/4 cup of butter, and we'll melt that. And we're basically just making a roux here. Okay, so once the butter is melted, we're going to go ahead and add some flour. Like I said, we're just making roux. Equal parts flour and fat. That's pretty straightforward stuff. So it was a 1/4 cup of butter. That's a 1/4 cup of flour. We're going to cook this off until that raw flour smell goes away. And then how far you cook this will also determine how dark your sauce is. So if you want it darker, you would, cook this roux a little bit longer. And if you want lighter sauce, then obviously don't cook it quite as long. And we're going to go somewhere in the middle. This will take probably 3, maybe 5 minutes. Okay, so it's been probably about 3 minutes, and as you can see, this has gotten nice and toasty brown. We're going to go ahead and go with that color right there. I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 cups of liquid. I'm using broth. And you want to kind of stir it as you go. Add a little bit, stir it in, add a little bit more. So I've seen different recipes with this that you can use just straight water. I've seen it using milk or cream. I mean, that would make it a very heavy sauce if you did that, but I mean, certainly you could do that. And I think I might have made a mistake here and added too much too quick, but it will all end up okay. At the end of the day, it's about getting dinner on the table, right? And I don't know how well it's picking it up on camera, but it's thickening up. Those clumps are breaking down. Okay. I'm going to give that a second. I'm going to go ahead and throw some seasoning in here. I'm going to do about a tablespoon of salt. Give it a couple good cranks of black pepper. Right about there. I'm going to put in a dash of cayenne, just because. And then I'm going to put in probably about a tablespoon, maybe 2, of paprika. And give that a good stir. According to the timer on the oven, that was 10 minutes. So I'm going to turn this down to a simmer. And then I'm going to taste this for seasoning. Oh, that's good. A little salty. Probably should have not put in a whole tablespoon of salt. I'm going to let that keep warm until the meatballs are done, and then we'll get everything combined and get ready for dinner. Okay, so full disclosure here. Whenever I said that that was too salty, it was way too salty. So what I did rather than throw it all out and start all over, I just added more water and diluted the salt. And then I added a cornstarch slurry, just a tablespoon of cornstarch with some water. And voila, Bob's your uncle stirred it in. It's no longer quite as salty and it's thickened back up. So, problem solved. Okay, so it's been 25 minutes. We're going to go ahead and check these. And like I said, we want to make sure they're at least 165. And we're way over that. It's like at 180. So I'm going to call these done. All right. So we're going to go ahead and do the assembly part of this. This is nothing crazy. We're going to take the meatballs out of the pan and add them to the sauce. Now, I have seen different recipes where they put the sauce on the pan and put the pan back in the oven. I don't like that because, as you can see in the pan, there's a lot of grease. And I don't necessarily like a super greasy sauce. So we're going to go ahead and do it this way. And then we're just going to turn this down to a simmer and let them cook. So it's not quite time to eat dinner yet, but right before I get dinner, I'm going to cook off some egg noodles and serve it over egg noodles. All right. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and plate up here. I went ahead and cooked off some egg noodles. Nothing crazy. Didn't figure that would make good content to show you how to cook egg noodles, but boil water. Then we're going to go ahead and plate up some meatballs. That's just my dishwasher. A little extra sauce. And we're going to garnish with parsley, some fresh parsley. And there we have it. I'm Larry, this is Dad What's for Dinner, and tonight it is Swedish meatballs. If you like this video and you want to see more content like it, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Go ahead and, as always, leave us a comment, and we will see you next time. Take care and God bless.